I've been promising that I would do this other anxiety assessment about guilt and shame, and I haven't gotten it done. I've been so distracted with all kinds of coffee stuff. So I'm going to do this one now for you. I think this is one that a lot of people probably have trouble with, but this is the one that they usually do not want to share with anyone. Guilt and shame are emotions that come from the frontal and temporal lobes of the brain, whereas guilt involves a feeling that one has behaved in a way that one finds unacceptable. Shame is related to feeling that other people will perceive you in a negative way. Both emotions are very anxiety-provoking. Okay, here's the assessment. So again, I'm going to read 8 statements, and you kind of keep track of how many apply to you. I frequently feel that I am not measuring up to what I expect of myself. I become very concerned when I contemplate not doing something that I feel I should do. I frequently worry about disappointing people and have trouble saying no. If a friend is very upset when I don't come to an event, I may feel guilty for days. It feels awful to know I have let someone down. It is easy for others to guilt me into doing what they want. It's very hard to admit and discuss my mistakes with others. Once a person criticizes me, I tend to avoid spending much time around that person. So, normally I say if you agreed with many of the statements, there's something that you need to deal with. In this one, golly, I would say if you agree with any of these, this is just my personal opinion, you need to deal with it. It would be good to deal with it. Based on my personal experience, any one of these can sort of just stifle you and hinder you from really living a full and enjoyable life. So it says here, if you agreed with many of these statements, you will benefit from cortex-based interventions, including cognitive restructuring and mindfulness. So I'm just going to go through 2 or 3 of these that really stuck out to me. Okay, the thing about having trouble saying no. Oh my goodness, how many people, I have known so many people, and I myself at one time in my life, I felt like I couldn't say no, that if somebody asked me something, if I couldn't think of a really good reason why I couldn't do it, I said yes. And the thing is that, you know what? You don't have to have a good reason to say no. Sometimes it's okay to say no just because you don't want to do it. That's okay. I was discussing with my counselor, this is actually a recent example. I retired and moved from where I was living several hundred miles to live by my daughter in another state, and she has several little children, expecting another one. And one of the reasons I moved here is to be available to help her, so we could be involved in each other's lives. And the thing is that it's difficult to strike a balance for how much, she didn't want to ask me for help too much, and I didn't want to say no too much, but I didn't want to feel obligated to say yes. And my counselor and I discussed it, and she said, you don't have to have some valid reason like, oh, I have a doctor's appointment or, something like that. It's okay if you just don't feel like it. It's okay to say no, and you don't have to have a reason other than you just don't want to. And do you know what? I guess for various issues that I've had in my life, codependency, things like that, Google it. I didn't feel like it was a good enough excuse if I just didn't want to do something. I felt like I had to have some other kind of, bona fide excuse. I can't do that because I have to do this. No, and I talked it over with my daughter, and she said, absolutely, I understand. Sometimes you just may not want to. I mean, they are not your kids. It's not your responsibility. If you don't want to, it's all right with me. Go ahead and say no. And she essentially freed me up to be able to say no. Okay, although, for some people, it's more difficult sometimes in a group. Like you're in the PTA at school or something, and they're asking for a volunteer to head up whatever, the school fair or whatever it is, be the class mom or something. And some people feel like they have to go ahead. They need to volunteer. They can't say no. Look, so many people are saying no. I can't. Somebody needs to do it. I need to do it. No, it's all right. It's okay to say no. I haven't always, but I've learned to counsel people and say, you know what? There may be somebody who needs to be doing this thing, and if you say you'll do it out of guilt, out of some sort of fantasy obligation that you think you have to fill in this need, then that other person who should be doing it, you're taking away their opportunity. If there's a need, someone will turn up to fill it. And, if nobody does, then maybe the need is not that needful. Something to think about. Okay, then has somebody ever invited you to something, and for whatever reason, you decided you just, were not going to come, and then you felt guilty? And, for days you're thinking, I feel so bad that I told them no. Oh my goodness. And, meanwhile, they're going on with their lives. Believe me, they are not sitting there saying, why didn't Sylvia come? Oh my gosh. No, you're the one that's wasting time, feeling guilty for no reason. Remember, other people think about you a lot less than you think they do. Yeah. Okay. It feels awful to know I have let someone down. Sometimes these things happen. You cannot be everything to everybody. And you have to be able to accept that. Let it go, move on with life, okay? If you know that if you don't help someone out, you're going to feel really bad, well, go ahead and help them out then. Better to spend the time helping them out than spend the time later going, oh gosh, I feel so bad I didn't help them out. Okay, you're going to spend time one way or another. All right. Oh boy, it is easy for others to guilt me into doing what they want. This happens so much between parents and children, doesn't it? There are things that my children will say to me, well, you guilted me into it. You made me feel guilty. So, of course I went ahead and went to this thing instead of staying home or whatever. And the thing is, I made a specific effort when I was raising my kids not to use guilting them into things. But the thing is that no matter what your intentions are, no matter how good they are, people interpret things the way they interpret them, And here it says it. It is easy for others to guilt me into doing what they want. Are they guilting you into it, or are you letting yourself be guilted into it? what you do is your decision. So maybe you need to work on the fact that you too easily feel guilty over things you don't need to feel guilty about. Very broad subject. Enough said. Okay, and the last two, it's very hard to admit and discuss my mistakes with others. And once a person criticizes me, I tend to avoid spending much time around that person. I think that this is a kind of a common thing. It's human nature. If somebody treats you in a way that is not comfortable or hurtful, or you take it badly, no matter how they intended it, there's a tendency to avoid unpleasant situations, right? So, but have you ever felt like maybe somebody said something, you took it as criticism, you didn't want to be around that person, but it was going to seem weird if you weren't around that person because they were involved in your life, in some way? It can become very difficult and convoluted and confused and, oh my goodness. You know what? Don't stress about the things that you cannot control. You can't control whether that person was being critical and mean and deliberately hurtful, but you can control how you take things. Your greatest power is the ability to choose one thought over another. And in so many of these things that I'm talking about, it involves not so much what's happening to you, but how you respond to it. Now, I see the mowers are out there in the backyard, and it's going to become too loud to continue this. So I'm going to go ahead and say have a good day. But think about these things, guilt and shame. So much to think about. And remember, if you're going to deal with issues in your life, deal with them in little pieces. Don't bite off a whole great big bite that's too big to swallow. Little pieces, chew them up, swallow them, and digest them. Have a good day.